Hey y'all, hi. Today I am going to be giving you a pretty thorough, deep dive first impressions, if there is such a thing, of the very lightest shade of the new Haus Labs Triclone Skin Tech Foundation. The lightest shade is shade 000 Fair Neutral, an intriguing color, a much hyped launch. I do want to say before we get into it, I know I've been doing a lot of first impressions lately. I like to keep first impressions mixed in because I feel like there is something about watching somebody kind of discover a formula and a product for the first time. The things that are confusing, the things that are surprising, it can be enlightening in a way that's different from like a deep dive review after testing for a long time. But it is never my intention to serve like first impression after first impression after first impression, which I know is what I've been doing lately. It has just been like a fluke of scheduling. It's like the way the cookie has crumbled with what has been released, when it has arrived to me, and how our schedule has been on the back end. So they all piled up at once. I have a feeling they're all going to kind of post within a couple of weeks of each other. This is kind of it, and we'll go forward with a little bit more balance. If this is your first time clicking on one of my videos and you're like, I don't care about any of that, I just want to know what you think of the Lady Gaga foundation, well, keep watching. And if you like this, I hope that you'll subscribe. I'm Hannah. I really enjoy reviewing beauty. And, you know, more than that, I have a deep interest in the relationship between aesthetics and consumerism. Sometimes I just get into the weeds with product reviews like this. Sometimes I take a step back and produce more philosophical content. It's usually a good time, and I hope that today will be as well. Now, let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. All right, I'm ready to go. I have the box that I haven't even opened yet. I mean, it literally just arrived. I am armed with a whole bunch of different kinds of complexion products that I know really well and that I know work for me. So I have green color corrector, various kinds, powder, some concealers and foundations that match me, that are too dark for me, but that have the right undertones, etc. And that is because on the listing on the website, this foundation appears to be stark white. And I don't know if that's true. I haven't watched any reviews of it. I haven't watched any live swatches or seen any swatches other than the ones that they're offering. And it seems unlikely that they would be showing this image of an absolute stark white product that literally looks like whiteout if it's not that, if it's actually just an extremely pale, neutral foundation. But at the same time, I don't trust any of the imagery, any of the swatch imagery of these listings because they all look bananas. For example, the fourth to the last shade in the range, which is 040 Fair Neutral, which by its description would be the one that would suit me the best. It says very fair with neutral, soft porcelain undertones. In the swatch, it is as pink as a pig. It looks like calamine lotion. The beautiful model that they have modeling this foundation, I see a quite neutral, sort of muted, pale olive. And if I was just basing it on that, I would maybe have gotten that color to test. But then you look at the swatch, I do not know what they're doing over there. I don't know what to say. And because of that, and because they have released this intriguing stark white swatch of foundation with no information about whether it's supposed to be a mix-in or a foundation, and also the model who's modeling shade 000, which is this whiteout color. I mean, that doesn't look like a face of white or whiteout. This model's skin also looks similar to mine, and if this product contributed to the model skin looking like this, then I feel like it could really work for me. It is just a mystery. The point is, I don't know whether this is actually going to be something that will work as foundation on its own. And that's why I've brought all of these other things along, because I might need to experiment. We might need to do a little bit of mixology. Let us just get into it. Wow, the packaging is very Skin by Kim's, I feel. Skins by Kim? Skin by Kim? The packaging is very minimalist, Kim Kardashian vibes. It has this blind embossing on the front, which I actually love. There's an impression in the cardboard, but without any ink. I mean, it looks white. The bottle's beautiful, frosted glass. It says shake well. It says shake well, but it doesn't sound very shaky in there. Oh yeah, no, it does. That's what the pump looks like. I mean, it's white. It is white as a piece of paper. And it's pretty liquidy, which I actually like that in a base product. I like something to be quite fluid. Oh, I should say I have primed my face with the YSL New Balm. I've been using this a lot and I found it to be a really reliable primer for testing base products. It's like a little bit of dewiness, but it's like a nice set, slightly tacky finish, pretty neutral, you know. And this, yeah, it's quite liquidy. Let's see. I'm just going to swatch it on my skin so we can kind of see and, you know, so I can get a good still for the thumbnail. All right, I'm going to look surprised. I'm going to look shocked for the thumbnail. That was probably good. Okay, first thoughts. I'm a little bit worried that if I blend this out, what's going to happen is that the very white pigment is going to, color-wise, mix with the redness on my skin, and that it's going to end up looking very pink. So very, very cool toned and just several shades lighter than the way that my face looks now. But I'm going to try it. I want to apply it in its kind of unadulterated form before I start mixing with other things so that we can kind of see what the texture is like, see how it dries. It is very thin, slippery, sort of serum-y. It's very serum-y. It almost feels like I didn't shake it enough. I feel like I shook it quite a lot, but it feels a little oily. Like it might even have been a little separated, but maybe that's just what it's supposed to be like. Okay, so interesting. So interesting. First things first, there's a lot going on. Oh my God. All right, I'm going to shake it even more and pump out some more just in case I didn't shake it enough and I didn't get a good first impression of its texture. Because it feels like a serum-y primer to me. All right, I feel like that's really, really shaken. No, I think that this is, yeah, no, that is it. Okay, so the listing says a medium coverage, weightless, clean foundation with fermented arnica that reduces redness and helps even skin tone and protects it from environmental stress. It's feeling to me like a skin tint, like kind of a slippery, really nourishing, serum-y skin tint. And it doesn't feel, and granted the one that I'm working with is literally white, but it doesn't feel medium coverage to me. So I've buffed some of it out into the back of my hand next to where I squeezed it out. And I think you'll be able to see there that you can really see my skin through it. And maybe that's what they mean by medium coverage these days, but that just surprises me. It surprises me that something that's spreading this thin would be marketed as something medium coverage. However, the way that it's laying down on my skin is providing visible coverage. It's definitely more coverage than something very, very light like the Glossier skin tint, for example. Maybe that's why they're not marketing it as a tint. Maybe it's just that tints are kind of less popular right now, kind of falling out of favor, and they thought that they would get more purchases, more attention by marketing it as a true medium coverage foundation. But I'm here to tell you that it feels like a totally different type of product from, for example, the RMS Re-Evolve foundation, which I believe is also marketed as medium coverage. The level of coverage is wildly different between these two products. This is something else that I recently tested. Like this, I have to work really hard to thin it out or even mix it with something to get it to show as much of my skin through as this is showing through. And yeah, it hasn't really transformed, set, dried, become more matte. It has stayed sort of serum-y on my skin. But I'm finding myself weirdly into what it has done, and that is because it's totally neutral, because it's totally white, and so it hasn't turned my skin really peach or really yellow, which so many pale foundations do. That's exciting for me, but it also isn't giving me that kind of gray, neutral color correction for my redness that I'm always looking for in a base product. It's like it's doing no evil, but it's not giving me everything that I need. I'm intrigued though. I'm gonna put it on the other side of my face just so we can kind of like assess the situation and go from there. I cannot express enough to you how much it feels like skincare, like a serum or a moisturizer. Honestly, it feels like a serum-y moisturizer, and it's nice. That aspect of it is really nice. I'm still having a hard time believing that this is what the texture is supposed to be. I'm gonna open it, pull the dropper out, and see if I get something thicker, more pigmented. Nope, it's just really slippery, slick, really liquidy. See that dribble? Yeah, really liquidy. And in terms of coverage, I hope you can see that this first layer has given me a very light coverage. You can still see my skin through it. It looks like sunscreen. It looks like I've applied sunscreen, like a zinc sunscreen, and it has a white cast. And for me, because one of the things I'm trying to do is to make my sort of redness darkened face better match my neck and the rest of my body, there have been times when I have felt like a zinc sunscreen that leaves a white cast mixed with a little bit of base product has helped to move my complexion more in the direction that I want it to go. So I am in this really very specific demographic of people for whom a straight up white cast can actually help with the end goal. So I think that there are people for whom this will be very useful, and I might be one of those people. I've got to say, before I start mixing it, I want to address further like the texture. And in fact, I think to do that, I probably need to try layering it with a brush just to see what happens. Right now, it just doesn't feel like it has set, and it feels like it'll swipe itself away. Actually, it's layering pretty well. It's sticking to itself. It's not leaving streaks. It's easier to build than the Patrick Ta Balm foundation that I recently reviewed. Yeah, actually, the finish is really pretty. That's with the second layer, and that's with just the first layer. I can see now what's going on with the model in the picture that has this foundation on, the model for the 000 Fair Neutral on the Sephora website. I think that it's just been applied in kind of a thin layer, sort of as like a blurring skin tint, and the model's actual skin is showing through, and that's why it doesn't just look like a full face of whiteout, you know what I mean? Because it's really just a wash, like a color correcting wash. But that makes me feel as though the marketing is really misleading, both what they're calling it, which is a medium coverage foundation, and I mean, maybe not the color swatches, although I still cannot get over that calamine lotion swatch. Now that I see how sort of sheer it is, I can understand how the model could look this way with the swatch looking that way if it's just a really, really sheer layer that's been applied to this model's skin. But that color would not do anything for me, I don't think. It seems from the pictures like maybe what they're calling cool toned on these listings is actually what most of the makeup world calls warm, and what they actually mean is olive. It feels like the color names, the labelings, the way that they've handled delivering information about the shade range, including the pictures, is just an absolute mess. And I wish that I had like the 5 latest shades so I could go through and get some conclusive information, but of course I couldn't afford to buy that. So I went with the one that I thought was like the most confusing, the most intriguing, which is this one. And hopefully some of the information about the other shades, I mean all of the shades, not just the lightest ones, but hopefully there's more information out there by this time. And I feel like the only remaining question that I haven't answered about the texture of the foundation is whether it will play well with others, because I will certainly need to mix this with other things if I'm going to use it. Curiously, because it's not setting, really, it feels like it doesn't set very much. I mean, maybe a little bit, but it definitely hasn't set so much that I'm not going to be able to mix it with other things in my face, even though I've been sitting here talking. So I'm going to try that now. And the thing that I'm the most excited to mix with this is the Purito BB cream, because the Purito BB cream, it's like my perfect shade. It's like this gray, this kind of like olivey gray, really, really neutral and desaturated, but it's several shades too dark for me. To be able to mix it with something that's just white so that the only thing that it's going to affect is how light it is and is not going to add any kind of color saturation is really exciting. It might mean that I'll be able to wear this BB cream. And the reason that I haven't been able to let go of the BB cream, even though the color is so wrong in terms of its depth, is that the texture is absolutely divine. It just feels so good going on the skin. In fact, it's kind of like this Lady Gaga foundation. They're both really, really skincare-y. It feels like my skin is just like being babied and bathed in serum-y moisture and skincare ingredients. And yet there's that coverage that's making it look more seamless. Yeah, really interesting. It looks like at close range, like I only have skincare on. My face isn't as perfect a match for my neck as I can sometimes get it to be with other products because it doesn't have enough yellow in it for that. Between those two products, I ended up with something that's just a little bit too much red, or like it's not quite olive enough, like not quite enough green or yellow. With a touch of green color corrector, I could probably fix that that, and maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just add a touch in. A little bit. Yeah, that got it a little bit closer. And it actually looks quite natural because my neck, I mean, it is the palest and most olive part of my entire body. That has gotten my skin to be a pretty close match for like the rest of my body in general, and it does look really normal. You know what I mean? Like the redness has been dealt with, but nothing has really been added. It's like a true no makeup look. I feel like the RMS foundation, which if you saw that review, you'll know was a smash hit success for me in terms of color. Like the shade is unbelievable and really matches my neck, and it's just the greatest. This is not as good of a match for my neck. It's not the perfect shade the way that this is, but it just looks way less makeup-y. And it makes me think that what this really is, what the Haus Labs foundation really is a BB cream, a liquidy BB or CC cream. That is exactly the look. It's exactly the texture, the skincare quality. It feels to me so much like the K-Beauty skin products that I've tried, and even like what I imagine many of the other K-Beauty skincare or complexion products that I've read about or watched reviews of but haven't tried. It's what I imagine them to feel like, or what I imagine them to do. Like the effect that I'm getting, this like really dewy, super skincare, glossy, not makeup-y feel, but with some coverage and color correction, is really aligned with that kind of thing. A hybrid, something that we don't really call a foundation or think of a foundation. And it's really interesting to me that they are calling this a foundation, marketing it as a foundation. And I can only imagine that they're doing that because of market research, that they started developing the product maybe as a tint or as a BB cream or something, and then they realized that tints are out and foundations are in, and that they're going to be launching it going into winter, and that if they didn't market it as a medium coverage foundation, there wouldn't be as much of an interest in it. And so that's what they did. That is what it feels. I mean, it's conspiracy theory. My conspiracy, allegedly. I'm telling you it not because I'm like, this is a conspiracy, but because me telling you that that is what I imagine happened is going to give you the most authentic explanation of what the texture is like as I can without you actually, touching it. Yeah, at close range, it looks like I have nothing on my skin. It looks like skincare only, but I know that without any kind of coverage, my skin is much more red than this and much less even. So that's really precious to be able to achieve a little bit of coverage without the look of any makeup. It is something that I really appreciate. I'm going to put a little bit of the RMS foundation just on my chin and maybe a little bit underneath my eyes to try to make my face blend ever so tiny bit much better with my neck. Oh my gosh, but you can see the coverage. There's so much more coverage in this product than the Lady Gaga. Like, look at that. It is like a real foundation. This Lady Gaga stuff, it's not a real foundation, you guys. I could see it being a really beautiful, useful product for a lot of people, but it's not a foundation. Okay, that gave me what I needed because I am actually going somewhere later today, and I felt worried that if I were to powder directly over the really BB creamy look that I had, even though it was very no makeup, which I love, that it would break up. I needed a little something to just anchor the coverage right under my eyes and on my chin and a little bit on my forehead, and that's it. But overall, it really doesn't look like makeup, even with the addition of a tiny bit of the RMS, and I quite like that. Let's see how it takes powder. Yeah, not bad, not bad. All right, I'm gonna finish. I don't really have a blush down here that'll work. I'm going to use Merit Baby, the lipstick, on the high points of my cheeks just a little bit and on my lips, and then I will be back to give you my final thoughts. I have just a couple of last things to say. Okay, that's how I've ended up looking with the rest of my makeup on. I'm going to tell you my final thoughts about the formula, like the product itself, just at large across the board. And then I'm going to talk about this actual shade of it, this very strange, unusual 000 neutral. Is that what they're calling it? 000 fair neutral, and whether or not I think that I'm going to continue to use it, and if so, in what capacity. As far as I can tell right now, having really done the most and tried the hardest with this product today, this formula is not very stable. It feels so much like sort of a skincare hybrid BB cream, but feels feels really good going on. It's really easy to get a beautifully applied layer of it, and it builds on itself and it blends really well, but it just doesn't set. It's not really designed for longevity. It feels as though it can be powdered a little bit, but I would worry that if I went hard with powder, especially if I had like a powder puff or sponge and I was like trying to press powder into it to get that really set bulletproof finish, I can't imagine that it would handle that very well. It feels like it would slide around underneath that powder and break up the surface. It feels like the kind of product, the kind of lightweight, hybrid, serum-y, comfortable, real skin, semi-sheer, BB creamy product that's been very popular, especially this past summer, but even over the past couple of years. And it feels like for some reason, they chose not to market it that way. I've already theorized a little bit in this video about why. Obviously, I don't have any inside information, but it feels very clearly to me as though the marketing doesn't align with the actual product. It's like they're not giving you all of the information. And it's a bit of a shame because even though they might be correct that they're going to drive more sales by labeling it this way, I think that there are actually probably people for whom this would be an amazing product, especially because BB creams, those kinds of things, are usually offered in a much narrower shade range because they claim to be more versatile. Like more people can wear a single shade because it's semi-sheer. And this, they've attempted to offer not just a wide shade range, not just a lot of shades, not just a very light lightest and a very dark darkest shade, but several different undertones. At least that's what they say. The labels indicate that they have tried to cover several different undertones within each level of lightness or darkness. So if you love a BB cream, if you love that kind of thing, if the idea of a much more robust version of the Glossier skin tint or a much less oily version of the Kosas oil serum foundation appeals to you, and you just have never been able to find one that works for your skin tone, either because you have a very deep skin tone or a very light skin tone or a specific undertone that's not usually catered to in K-beauty, then this could be really exciting for you, but you might not know that based on the way that it's been marketed. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't know that unless you saw this review or a review like it or swatched it in store. It's not telling you that. You might gloss over it because you would look at it and you'd be like, oh no, just another medium coverage straight up foundation. That's not for me. But again, I'll say the thing that I own, that I've used, that it reminds me the most of is the Purito BB cream, which is like one of the most beautiful makeup products that I've ever tried. It's just that they don't have a shade anywhere close to me. This doesn't have the sunscreen in it like the BB cream does. And again, it's much more liquidy when you squeeze it out than the creamy. This isn't exactly whipped or stiff, but it's just a little bit more firm of a cream than the one from Haus Labs. But in terms of the cosmetic elegance and like the style of the cosmetic, like the niche that it feels like it's fitting into, these are very akin. They are in the same family to me. So I hope that that gives you some information, like information that's not available on the internet yet or that's not available in the Sephora listing. And then we're left, I feel, completely at sea when it comes to finding the correct shade, because they have used the terms warm and cool in a way that's unconventional in the makeup world. The visual swatches that they've given, as far as I can tell, are strangely saturated in the pictures on the internet. I feel like it's going to be absolute chaos for a lot of people trying to find their shades. It's hard to know whether you should trust what it says in words or what the model looks like or what the swatch looks like, or none of those. And I worry that there's going to be a lot of trial and error. So I guess when it comes to the product that they've developed, the way that it's been marketed, and the offerings of the labels, the names, and the pictures that they've given us to guide us towards our correct shades, my feeling in one sentence is that they have created a really beautiful product and flubbed all of the rest. When it comes to this shade, this actual whiteout colored 000 fair neutral, I appreciate that it's there. I actually think that there are going to be people for whom, given that it is actually more of like a runny BB cream, there are going to be people for whom this is really useful and it's interesting to see it there. It's intriguing. I am definitely still going to have to mix it. I have to add in the hefty dose of green that I need, and I actually feel like I didn't put in enough green today because I was so eager to mix it with the Purito BB cream, the hefty dose of green that I need, and the actual tint that I need. I think I'm going to have to mix it with just a little bit of pigmented stuff to get it to do what I want it to do, because otherwise it's just going to give me a whiter version of the color of most of my skin. And I don't just need a little bit of lightening and evening on my skin. I actually need color correcting away from red and in the direction of olive to get it to the actual color that my skin would be if I didn't have that redness. So it's just not doing enough for me, but I think that I'm going to enjoy mixing it with more full coverage foundations that are more heavy duty, like the RMS, which isn't a super intense heavy duty foundation, but it's just much more of a real foundation than this is. I'm going to enjoy mixing it in because it's so skincare-y. It's a really, really beautiful serum-y consistency, and I can feel my skin being really appreciative of it. It feels like this would never grab on dry patches, would never do a disservice to like the texture on the surface of the skin when it comes to things like dryness, crepiness, even fine lines. It feels like it's always going to be pumping up sort of the juicy, moistury, serum-y finish of the skin and of anything, when you mix it in. And because I have dry skin, I could see myself finding it useful. I could see myself mixing product with it in the way that I mix product with the Natasha Denona Skin Glass or Auric Glow Lust, or even just sometimes with serums, with skincare, with lotions, except that this will have the added benefit of having some of that white pigment that'll lighten up products that are too dark for my face. So it's definitely unique to me. I don't have anything like it, and I never have. The closest that I've ever come to having a thing like this is having cosmetically elegant sunscreens that leave a white cast and like mixing them with product or using them layered with product. That's the thing that I've ever had that it reminds me the most of. But curiously, I feel like even though this was a first impressions, and even though I will definitely come back in the future and tell you how it's gone, I think that the outstanding mystery with this, what remains to be seen, is like how and if I'm actually going to end up integrating it into my actual routine of makeup, if it's actually going to be worth it to me to mess with this kind of serum-y, glossy, stark white goop. And of course, I'll report back on that because you never know. Sometimes I try something a couple more times and I'm just like, this isn't worth it, and it falls out of favor. And sometimes it really shines. But I feel like even though this was a first impressions, I was able to give you a lot of specific information about the texture of the product, maybe enough for you to decide whether it is for you or not, or at the very least enough to kind of counteract how misleading the marketing is, actually. And even the reviews on Sephora, I scrolled through them a little bit, and many of the reviews I read were just like, I love this foundation so far. It makes my skin look so great. And nobody was like, this is literally like a semi-sheer, slick, goopy, serum-y tint. I actually feel like it's noteworthy, the fact that the texture is so unexpected. So I'm over here feeling this is actually relatively robust when it comes to first impressions, and I hope that you feel the same. If you were here for some purposes other than entertainment purposes, which I know a lot of you just watch for entertainment purposes, even if you're not even remotely considering buying the product, which is also what I do as a YouTube viewer. Just, FYI, I'm right there with you. I'm one of you. But if you were here for specific purposes, like really trying to learn more about this product, I hope that you feel like you have been enlightened in some way. And if watching this was a good experience and you're new, I hope you will subscribe. If you're curious about the RMS foundation, keep an eye out because the video in which I review this is going to pop up as I fade out. It'll be like a clickable thumbnail. You can click through and watch that one. Thank you again for being here. Don't forget to take extra good care of yourself so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world. Skin by Kim?